Iran's strategy is different. They want to make this war last. They want to make it hurt. They want to make it expensive. Iran isn't attacking the U.S. military directly. They're attacking the global economy from the inside. They're aiming for the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, the financial engines that keep the U.S. economy alive. Blocking the Strait of Hormuz cuts 90% of the food entering these countries. An inexpensive drone can destroy a desalination plant and leave millions of people without water in 2 weeks. No water, no food, no oil. These countries will collapse. And when they do, they're going to stop investing in the U.S. They'll stop recycling petrodollars into Wall Street, and they'll stop financing the AI and the data centers that support the American economic bubble. Iran doesn't need to win the battle. They need to break up this alliance. And when the bubble bursts, it's going to take everything down with it. Iran's strategy is different. They want to make this war last. They want to make it hurt. They want to make it expensive. Iran isn't attacking the U.S. military directly. They're attacking the global economy from the inside. They're aiming for the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, the financial engines that keep the U.S. economy alive. Blocking the Strait of Hormuz cuts 90% of the food entering these countries. An inexpensive drone can destroy a desalination plant and leave millions of people without water in 2 weeks. No water, no food, no oil. These countries will collapse. And when they do, they're going to stop investing in the U.S. They'll stop recycling petrodollars into Wall Street, and they'll stop financing the AI and the data centers that support the American economic bubble. Iran doesn't need to win the battle. They need to break up this alliance. And when the bubble bursts, it's going to take everything down with it.
Everything about this is about collapsing the global economy. That's all it is. They're bankrupt.
Mothers out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be, and President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table.
So Mr. No New Wars won't rule out reinstating the draft, according to Caroline Leavitt, which is really odd because I thought that the president of peace said that we had already won this war. We haven't won the war. In fact, we woke up to images of black rain, oil fires, and Armageddon-like scenes all over Iran. And reports from residents in Tehran that they have been told to stay inside for fear of toxic acid rain. They need to worry about what they're eating because of contamination on food. They've bombed a desalination plant, and people report that it's difficult to breathe if they try to go outside or drive anywhere. A 7th U.S. soldier has now died. The State Department has bypassed Congress to send Israel more than 20,000 bombs, and the State Department has issued mandatory departure orders for diplomats in Saudi Arabia. All of this is the reality of a war that's being decided in Washington by men who are playing golf this weekend and men who think that it's fun to cosplay military heroes and then come up with cheesy slogans and sizzle reels on social media to celebrate their victories. These are the men who will decide if they're going to reinstate the draft and ship your boys off to war.
What would you say if there was a draft, mandatory military service, to send troops to Iran or the Middle East to fight in this war if it got any more serious? I mean, it's quite serious now, but I'm talking if it went more bigger scale, more countries involved. You know what I'm talking about? Check out this clip.
Shalom. First thing and foremost, I want to give all praises and glory and honor is due to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone and rule well. Peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect. Yours in the gospel bride, lifting up the standard of Yahawah, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, wherever it may be. This is another lesson through the Spirit titled The Brothers from Arrows of Indignation. It says, especially you Jakes, listen up, between 18 and 25, going into the reinstation of a military draft. And we know that all world wars dealt with a military draft. I believe the draft was, matter of fact, let's do this real quick. Hold on, let's do this. Slack. Which wars required a draft? Draft in America. It says the United States utilized the military draft to mobilize personnel in 6 major conflicts, which is the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam War. I remember the Vietnam War. I remember there was a draft. I think my grandfather fought in Vietnam. But after that, then they were just like selective service. Then I think that they didn't make it required because of loss of life. But if this is a world war and this conflict is beginning to be a world war, you better rest assured there will be a military draft. And like they said, Trump didn't rule it out. You know, but what's so funny about it all is that now mothers are worried about their sons and daughters getting drafted. But see, when you have your YNs out here, and I did a lesson on this Friday, but when you got the YNs out here engaging in all type of wickedness and mischievousness, then all of a sudden, you know, now you want to worry about your son's safety, but yet he's running up and down the streets, robbing people for kids, putting switches in people's faces, but yeah, you don't want this little motherfucker to go to war. No, they gonna bring back a draft. They gonna have to, because if the other nations get involved, or if it becomes a broader regional conflict and Europe has to get involved and China has to get involved, Russia gets involved. China have a 1 million-man army, and you don't by far have that many forces, not even on reserves to combat that. So they're gonna have to bring back a draft in the UK. They're gonna have to they're gonna have to draft in Europe, and they definitely are gonna draft here in America, just to let you know. And the crazy part about it, you're still not gonna win the war, you know. And with Donald Trump, that ain't nothing off the table with this devil, man. You know, the same devil that told you that he wasn't gonna go to war with Iran, he did it. There was a clip that was sent to me going back into the early 90s when Trump was talking about how Iran needs to be invaded and how there needs to be war and conflict with them in the East to stay involved with certain tensions and to get them to do away with nuclear programs and X, Y, and Z, in which Iran agreed to a lot of the draconian methods of the West, and yet they still are messing with Iran, man. All right. But it says, although not a war, a conventional or sense of form of conscription was also used during the American Revolutionary War. So Civil War, 1863. First federal draft was authorized to bolster Union forces. World War I, 1917. The Selective Service Act was passed to register men for war. So you know how on your 18th birthday, you have to register for the Selective Service. Okay, I remember when I was getting out of high school, my 18th birthday, I got a notice in the mail saying I got to register for war. And this is during the time of the Iraq, when they went down to Iraq. I think they went down there maybe 2003. Well, it started in 2001, of course, because the, you know, Nueve Once bombings, whatever, which they found out that was all a hoax. And a lot of people lost their lives in that because Iraq had nothing to do with the war on terror. But it started back in 2001. And I believe 2002 to 2003, you had men that was enlisted and shipped off to Iraq. And I think I graduated, 2004 maybe, something like that. And I was, 17, maybe? 17, 18. And then I remember my mom at the time, she was like, you need to go to college. You need to go to college because they going to try to drive. I'm just like, I'm just like, all right, whatever. But we had to register for it. And that's another thing, too, man. You know, there's a lot of pressure being put on Jake as males. We damn if we do, we damn if we don't. So regardless of it, a lot of Jakes just gonna have it hard, because if you 18 and 25 or you have some type of military experience, even if you in your upper 30s, 40s, they're gonna call you back if you're not injured, because they're gonna need all hands on deck. Because when they touch boots on the ground, which that's not off the table, once boots touch the ground in Iran, then you better believe that's when a broader regional conflict will enact. But it says here, World War II, 1940 to 1945, it says the first peacetime draft was enacted in 1940 following a widespread conscription during war. And this is when you had those patriots, those real men that was bred for war. You know, they didn't have all the GMOs and all this other stuff. You actually had real men. You know, you had the Delta Force, you had the Marines, the Army, the Navy. You know, you had those branches of military men that was about that life. Now, the average Marine, or at least the average U.S. Army cadet, is nothing more but a TikTok and a podcast, a podcaster, man. Okay, these people are not bred for war. They're weaker now because they have all this internet, the food's tainted, and they have all this comfortability. And that's why it makes it so detriment fighting a world war in these times, because the American military, they're just, I mean, yeah, you got some men in there. You got some warriors in the American military. But those are those men, you know, from the Delta Forces, you know, the what you call the Green Berets, you know, the Navy SEALs, you know, you got the CIA operatives, man, the military aspect of that. You got some real killers in the military. But even then, and just the amount of people they putting in there now for a paycheck, it's not looking too good. But it says here, the Korean War, 1950, the draft was used to maintain troop levels during the Cold War. And you had the Vietnam War, extending drafting occurred, which ended in 1973 when the military shifted to all volunteer force because of the loss of life. And we was coming into the times, too, of, you know, the civil rights and feminism and all this other wickedness. And they pretty much put men in a back seat. It says, while the draft ended in 1973, the selective service system remains active in deep standby, requiring men 18 to 25 to register. And not only that, that's going to go up. Okay. But nonetheless, a draft has always been there on the table just in case a broader conflict with Iran and Russia transpired. And we in those times, man. Okay. So there will be a draft, whether there be a direct draft or indirect draft. There will be some type of draft, and they're going to get you YNs. They're going to get you Keishas out there, you bonnets out there. Okay. They're going to get a lot of you so-called independent boss women. You know, a lot of you cops that got military experience. A lot of you going to have to go back if you're able-bodied. And, you know, hey, they're going to put boots on the ground. Right now, it's like an air war, you know, and they're attacking certain depots and stuff like that. But America is being totally outsmarted, man, okay? They're hitting decoys, not even real sites. And Iran is saving the big shit for last. In America, they're sitting up here. The radar technology that they got, it sucks, man. Okay, they can't even tell what's a real weapons cache or a particular target or a particular platoon that they're bombing because the Iranians are setting up diversionary tactics. They already ready. They say, we've been ready for you they've been preparing for you, man, since you went into Iraq back in 2003. They've been ready for you. Even before then, they was training for you. You know, because the whole thing of Iraq was to destabilize borders so they can weaken the defense to get into Iran, because through Syria or through Iraq, Syria, and Iran, you can get it to Iran through, because they harbor one another, the borders, you know, which those are big land masses there, but they wanted to have a troop presence built up on the borders of Iran so they can go in there and do what they need to do, you know. But anyway, let's go here to the book of Jeremiah 50, and let's start at verses 9. It says, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, okay, and they should set themselves in array against her, and from thence she shall be taken, and their arrows should be as a mighty expert man, and none should return in vain. Yeah, you got Syria, you got Iran, okay, you're gonna have Turkey, you got Russia, because Russia is north as well, okay, you're gonna have China, and you're gonna have all their allies that's gonna shoot missiles on this place. And it says, and the Chaldeans should be a spoil, and all that spoil her should be satisfied, says the Lord. Okay, so they definitely gonna have to reinstate a draft. So let's do this map of Middle East. And I hate that term, Middle East, but you know, we call it what we call it because it just, you know, it just was familiar to us, even though there's no such thing as Middle East. But that's neither here nor there. So bam, you got Saudi Arabia, then you have Iran. So you have the border, which Iraq borders Iran, all right? And then you have Turkey, which you can get into Iran from Turkey, all right? And you can get into Iran from Syria, not Syria, but Iraq. But you notice Turkey and Syria, or Syria harbors the border of Turkey and Iraq, okay? So in order for you to go through Syria to get to Iran, you have to go through Iraq and Kuwait, and then you can get to Iran, you see? But then you have Afghanistan, you have Pakistan. But this is Iran here, and this is where America is currently in this region, that Fertile Crescent. You see? And this is what they want. So the whole going up into Iraq, that was to destabilize the borders of Iran because they wanted to have a troop presence there. You know? You got Russia. But it says for the north country. Russia sits in the north. You got Turkey that sits in the north. Okay, then you got Saudi Arabia, you got Iraq, then you got Iran. And that's a hard land to conquer, man. That's gonna take some work, which they've never been able to fully conquer Iran. But it says, because you were glad, because you rejoice, O ye my destroyers of my heritage, because ye are grown fat as the heifer at grass and bellows as bulls. And it says, your mother should be sore confounded, and she that bare you should be ashamed. But behold, the hindermost of the nations should be as a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Because when you go here, you got Saudi Arabia here, man. All right, and it's nothing but desert out there. And it says, because the wrath of the Lord, it should not be inhabited, but it should be wholly desolate. And everyone that goeth by Babylon should be astonished and hiss at all our plagues, because America is going to get pelted with those missiles. Okay. And it says, put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, and ye should bend the bow and shoot at her and spare no arrows, for she had sinned against YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI. So let's look up a world map, right? Let's do a world map. Map of world. All right, which we're all familiar with this, right? Now, Babylon the Great. Now look how big Russia is compared to Babylon. Look how big. I mean, Russia is a huge landmass, man. But Russia doesn't be in the north. You got Kazakhstan, you have Turkey, Iraq, then you have Iran, you have Kuwait, you have Qatar, which they would consider those Gulf states. Sometimes Iran is included, but you got the Saudis, etc. But this is that Middle Eastern region here, which that's really Western Asia. But see, when they shoot missiles, they can shoot missiles going east or west, because if they were technically honest, if they wanted to get into America, here's Alaska, right? They can go through that Bering and they can fly up over Alaska and shoot right into America. It's quicker. You can get in America from Russia within a few hours, depending on what way you take. But all those missiles are going to come here and pelt America, man. So they definitely going to have boots on the ground by then. You see? But through the spirit and power of YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, we've been prophesying this. But it reads, shout against her round about. She hath given her hands, and her foundations are fallen. Her walls are thrown down. For it is the vengeance of the Lord. So take vengeance upon her, as she hath done, doing to her. Okay? Now that goes into the missiles being shot. But when you go to the book of Jeremiah 51, and let's go to the, because this whole chapter really breaks up. It jumps. But when you go here to verses 27, it says, set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, and prepare the nations against her, and call together her the kingdoms of Arad, many in Ashkenaz, and appoint a captain against her, and cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars, and prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, and the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land should tremble in sorrow, and every purpose of the Lord should be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitants. It says, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. It says, they have remained in their holds, and their might have failed. They become as women. They have burnt our dwelling places, and our bars are broken. Okay? Yeah, because like I mentioned, once they put boots on the ground in Iran, then expect a bigger conflict, especially among these Gulf states, because they all have an asset, or they all have a purpose for dealing with Iran's oil, because I believe the Strait of Hormuz is like roughly 20% of the world's oil, if I'm not mistaken. But let me double check that. Let me fact check that, because there's different sources out there that say different things. How does the Strait of Hormuz affect the United States? Okay, it says that the Strait of Hormuz is a critically global energy choke point, though which about 20% of global oil flows directly impacting the U.S., gas prices, and economic stability. As of March 2026, intensified conflicts have led to a 70% drop in traffic. Wow, threatening to trigger major price spikes. The U.S. is heavily involved in protecting shipping lanes for potential for military escalation. So they want to make sure that strait is continued open. But the funny part about it is that they have over 600 years of untapped oil resources, man, in the Gulf. Also, they just took over Venezuela, so they have oil that they can sit on. It's just a matter of producing it and manufacturing it, man. You know, but they have enough to keep themselves sustained. So why are they fucking with everybody else? Like, they don't even have to be down there, but that's Esau's greed because he's the devil, man. He just want to make sure that nobody else can be well without him. Because basically it's really based on the fact that the U.S. needs leverage on the world because the petrodollar is collapsing, the dollar is failing. So once the dollar fell, then those reserves come back to the United States, and then you have what they call hyperinflation. But see, he needs to keep his foot on the neck of all the nations, and this is why he's doing that, man, to protect his hegemonies. This dude is a devil, bro. Okay, so they gonna definitely bring back a draft.
Clip from Fox News, and notice she didn't really say that's not going to happen. Listen to this.
Mothers out there are worried that we're
And fuck the mothers, man. You should have thought about that when you had your YN ass sons out there skipping school and eating all types of GMO fucking foods in the morning and robbing and stealing kids. Send them niggas over there, man. You know, at least they can bring your ass a paycheck when they end up dying. You feel me? But anyway, at the end of the day, regardless of it, look, shit is gonna escalate. All right, bringing back a military drive, it ain't gonna do nothing but put more bodies and add more casualties.
going to have a draft that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now. It has been, and it will continue to be, and President Trump wisely does not remove options.
But how do you know that? And how much you're in bet they're not going to draft their sons and daughters? These TV anchor women and whatsoever, because they all juiced in. You ain't going to have the sons and daughters of the presidents, Trump, you know, Epstein's and all the Rockefeller. They not sending their sons and daughters. This is for you people, okay? War is for peons, man, to believe it or not. According to them.
Off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table.
Okay, hold on a second. I typed this in for the U.S., and I'm going to tell you what it says for Canada. But it says, no, there's no active duty military. Don't worry about that. But automated registration of the selective service system remains in place as a contingency, and it's going to start in late 2026. Now, when I typed in for Canada, is there a draft? Is there a mandatory military service? It says, no, Canada it's totally voluntary. It's been voluntary since World War II. In other words, it was mandatory during a world war, but it's not mandatory when there's no world war. You know what I mean? So if there was another world war, is all of a sudden, like, to me, it's not very convincing to say, like, no, don't worry about a draft. The last one was during a world war.
The White House is considering a military draft. No, I'm not exaggerating. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt was on an interview with Fox News, and the anchor asked her, hey, what do you say to those parents who are worried about their sons being drafted to fight in a war they don't agree with? And Carolyn Leavitt basically said, oh, we're not ruling out any options. Let me explain to you what that really means. The only reason you even consider a military draft for a conflict is because you are planning a ground invasion and you are expecting it to have high casualty numbers. Every angle I look at this situation from, I can find no other reason that they're refusing to rule out a military draft other than they are planning a ground invasion of Iran. You may be telling yourselves, oh, this will be just like Vietnam. No, it will be so much worse. Unlike Vietnam, the government of Iran has spent the last 30 to 50 years preparing for this conflict because they knew it was coming. That means they are
I'm gonna tell you like this, bro. This is gonna, when they do this is gonna set a lot of people back, man, because you gonna have revolts off that, because people already waking up to the point, I'm not sending my sons and daughters to fight for Israel. They gon' a lot of people are not with that. They're like, what the hell I look like sending my sons and daughters to fight for a bunch of pedos, man? They don't care anything that put all our money into foreign policy, lobbyists, making them billionaires, man. This dude, Elon Musk, damn near touched $1 trillion, bro. He's touching it. Look, 200 more million, man. Hey, this dude gonna touch $1 trillion, bro. You know? And you got lobbyists and so forth, and their kids are going to school for free and free health care, and you looking at the American people like we can barely afford turkey bacon. And you think we finna go to war? People gonna revolt. You're gonna have a lot of draft dodgers. You're gonna have revolts. You know, it's gonna be chaos in the U.S. by the time they do that shit. And then let alone like the celebrities, like these loyal up, like they gonna grab people up, man. It'd be funny if they start grabbing up celebrities too, like, you know, boxers and shit like that. Any man with any type of fighting experience, MMA fighters, you know, boxers, man. You know, that nigga Errol Spence get a draft letter like, EJ, you gotta go to war, bro. Like, EJ ain't going for that shit. But I'm just making fun of it. We don't know how it's gonna go, but hey, they gonna probably grab them niggas up too. And they gonna be like, man, I'm not going. A lot of people gonna get their money and they gonna move overseas. They gonna get out of the U.S. jurisdiction. Hell, I forgot. I think they said Trump was a draft dodger, if I'm not mistaken. One of them presidents, they say, yeah, he dodged the draft. We know Muhammad Ali did it. I think he spent a couple years in prison for it. But people like, fuck it, I'll go to jail because I'm not finna sit up here and go and get my head blown off for a bunch of people that don't even think twice about my living condition. Here, I can't even afford rent, but I got to go up there and put myself on the line for a bunch of goddamn devils. People, Jake ain't going for this shit, man. But a lot of you, they just gonna grab up by force. And they really coming for you, the kids of the single mothers, you know, Keisha, they really coming for the YNs. You know, they gonna hit the hood heavy and they gonna, you know, they may do recruitment first. They may offer exceptional bonuses. And, you know, Keisha, she changes her tune when money is involved. Well, we'll give him $100,000 bonus. And he'll never see none of that money, you know. They give his ass a $20,000 bonus sign on, and over time we'll give you 100 bands. You know, you're gonna be cool. We gonna take care of your family, and Jake gonna go and fall for the bait, and Jake ain't gonna never see that money because he's gonna be blown into 1,000 pieces somewhere. Nigga ass gonna be in Kuwait, leg gonna be in Iran, nigga forehead gonna be in Russia. Jake, you gonna go down there and you gonna get slaughtered, bro. Okay, war ain't nothing, especially if you ain't bred for it. You got motherfuckers in Turkey, you got them Afghanis, man, them towel heads over there. Them niggas learn how to tow AK-47s from 7 years old, and this is all they know is war and living in dung holes. Eating fucking lentil bean soup and goat meat and camel meat, man. Niggas they about it. UINs can't do nothing with a towel head, man. You can't even shoot a gun right. You know?
Better prepared for the scenario, better supplied, and better trained. And it's also worth noting that as a percentage of Iran's land, they are one of the most mountainous countries on the planet. The Iranians know those mountains, the United States doesn't. So here are some things to keep in mind. For years preparing for this conflict because they knew it was coming.
All of a sudden, like, to me, it's not very convincing to say, like, no, don't worry about a draft. The last one was during a world war.
The White House is considering a military draft. No, I'm not exaggerating. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt was on an interview with Fox News, and the anchor asked her, hey, what do you say to those parents who are worried about their sons being drafted to fight in a war they don't agree with? And Carolyn Leavitt basically said, oh, we're not ruling out any options. Let me explain to you what that really means. The only reason you even consider a military draft for a conflict is because you are planning a ground invasion and you are expecting it to have high casualty numbers. Every angle I look at this situation from, I can find no other reason that they're refusing to rule out a military draft other than they are planning a ground invasion of Iran. You may be telling yourselves, oh, this will be just like Vietnam. No, it will be so much worse. Unlike Vietnam, the government of Iran has spent the last 30 to 50 years preparing for this conflict because they knew it was coming. That means they are better prepared for the scenario, better supplied, and better trained. And it's also worth noting that as a percentage of Iran's land, they are one of the most mountainous countries on the planet. The Iranians,
they have never conquered. That's why they're still the Persians. That's one of the oldest lands that's still original to this day on planet Earth. Even Alexander couldn't get it, bro. They not ready, bro. America been sending CIA to spy out surveillance on Iran for decades. And they've never been able to fully come back with anything because the terrain is rocky. It's crazy to have dunk holes out there. That's the reason why the U.S. they would lose that war over there because they don't understand the landmass. It's not the fact. I mean, even the firepower is questionable because I mean they got the firepower, but they're questioning the firepower now. They spend $2 trillion and drop 12 bombs and ain't hit shit. They're gonna run out of. They don't have it, man, you know? And on top of that, the Iranian forces, they're well better prepared because they had time to prepare. While the West, everybody was living life and having this soft life. They was preparing because their conditions over there is a little different. Okay, they wasn't playing PS5. While you niggas trying to wait for GTA 6 to come out, them niggas was over there training, you know? And you might not never get that GTA 6, or you're going to have to get the chip. And you're going to have a lot of Jake that's going to try to dodge the drive because, hey, they going to want to play GTA 6. But anyway, it's not looking too good. This dude makes a lot of sense, man.
Applied and better trained. And it's also worth noting that as a conflict is because you are planning a ground invasion and you are expecting it to have high casualty numbers. Every angle I look at this situation from, I can find no other reason that they're refusing to rule out a military draft other than they are planning a ground invasion.
Salakia, brothers, keep pausing it, but I'm going to say one more thing and I'll let it play. They're bringing back a draft because they know that this is going to go into a global war. Okay, this is basically World War III. All right, this is going to go into a broader conflict. Now, also, to not jump the gun, they can declare peace. Okay, they can de-escalate shit. I can very well see them doing that in the near future when things get so out of hand. Gas prices end up going up. I can very well see them halting things. If it's something, is going to spark it back up, man. And I believe, me personally, when the dollar collapses, I believe that's when tensions are going to really boil over. That's just my humble opinion, you know. It can go elsewhere, but that's just what I see happening. Or it could go on, you know. It can be a stalemate, and it can be just be a air war, and it could be a stalemate, a regional war. But eventually, it's going to escalate. When that chip is instituted, that's when things are going to really hit the fan. So we have to remember that. We can't rule out the RFID chip because this can't happen as far as a nuclear war until the MOTB is established. And that's what we're waiting on right now. So until that happens, then, hey, it's safe to say it just right now is still a rumor. Okay, even though there's an actual war, there's still a rumor. It's not boiled over into deeper conflict yet. You know, they're not in complete deep waters, but it's not looking too good for them either. All right, so there ain't no need to be panicking right now, okay? If you a man in the Lord, but you people of the world, you need to panic anyway because you people getting ready to get touched, man. All right?
Iran. I mean, you may be telling yourselves, oh, this will be just like Vietnam. No, it will be so much worse. Unlike Vietnam, the government of Iran has spent the last 30 to 50 years preparing for this conflict because they knew it was coming. That means they are better prepared for the scenario, better supplied, and better trained. And it's also worth noting that as a percentage of Iran's land, they are one of the most mountainous countries on the planet. The Iranians know those mountains, the United States doesn't. So here are some things to keep in mind. First, look up conscientious objectorship. Figure out how to apply for it. Figure out how to win an application for conscientious objectorship because that will keep you out of a draft. Second, start talking about fragging as publicly and often as you can on social media and in real life. Keep in mind at all times that the penalty for refusing draft summons or draft deployment is a far better alternative, even though it is a 5-year sentence in prison. We have no indication that a draft is imminent. We do have a heavy indication that the United States government under Donald Trump is considering one anyway.
So there you go, man. They're going to have to bring back a draft, buddy. Because this is going to leak over to broader conflicts. So this is the book of Joel 2:1. Blow you the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain and let all the inhabitants of the land tremble. For the day of the Lord coming, for it is nigh at hand. And these conflicts eventually is going to lead up to the day of YAHAWASHI, YAHAWASHI returning. A day of gloominess and of darkness and a day of clouds and thick darkness. As the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and strong. There have not ever been the like, neither should there be any more after it, even the years of many generations. Meaning it's not going to be another world war. Okay, this final war, when it escalates into world war and nukes are shot, that's when things are going to, you know, when the Lord comes back and restore all things, that's when things are going to, you know, go back to their normal habitat, and we're not going to see the likings of war anymore because all the weapons and so forth is going to be destroyed and the nations are going to be subjugated into the Israelites, our people. So they're not going to have a chance to go to war because we're going to be in power. This earth is going to thrive in peace. It's going to be a beautiful paradise, but we got to get through this tension first. But, you know, hey, the kingdom getting ready to be established, man. You know, so it ain't looking too good for Esau. This dude is done. And it says, and a fire devoured before them, and behind them a flame burneth. It says, the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing should escape them. Going into the destruction. Going down here to verses 20, it says, but I remove far from you the northern army. Yeah, because they going to have to put boots on the ground. That's a draft, man. I remove far from you the northern army, and I will drive him into a land barren and desolate. You know, over there in that Fertile Crescent, you got Saudi Arabia, barren and desolate, and his face towards the east sea, and the hindermost part towards the utmost sea, and his stink should come up, and his ill savor should come up, because he have done great things. Right? You got the Persian Gulf, you got the Red Sea, you know, and that war is going to be fought right in that, what they consider that Fertile Crescent, man. But Bible calls it the Valley of Jehoshaphat. All right. Joel 3. And I'm going to start at verses 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Yeah, there go your draft right there. They're going to need They're going to need more bodies. They're going to need boots on the ground. Okay, when the air game disseminates or dissipates, then they got to put body on the ground. They need more people. That means they got to call reserves, the Navy, the Air Force. You know, hell, they don't even have to call in the Space Force, because when the chariots show up, who gonna go up against them? But it says, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, and let the weak say, I am strong. I run. They're strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Did the cause like mighty? Yeah, Salakia call came through. But anyway, I was getting ready to end it. Anyway, I'm getting ready to end it anyway. That was pretty much the end of it. Just wanted to give a closing salute. I hate when that happens. The whole purpose of do not disturb is so a call don't come through, but it somehow it interrupts the screen recording. So anyway, I'm going to end it. All praises and glory and honor that is due to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, KADASH. Lord, will you edify into the next lesson. Shalom.